I stared at my phone in disbelief, replaying the furious voicemail for the third time just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. "This is Melissa," the voice screeched. "I can't believe you'd abandon a family member like this." Karen told me everything was arranged. "I had to book a hotel because of you, and trust me, you will be paying for it. Expect to hear from my lawyer." I blinked at the screen, completely dumbfounded. Melissa? Who on earth was Melissa? I didn't know any Melissa, and I sure as heck hadn't promised to host anyone. Before I could even start piecing things together, my email notification dinged. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. There it was, a $600 charge to my credit card from the Lakeside Resort and Spa. The receipt listed the guest as Melissa Winters, staying under the name Gregory Patterson. That's me, except I had never authorized this charge, and I'd never even heard of Melissa Winters before today. This bizarre nightmare had actually started 3 weeks earlier, when I moved into Willow Creek Estates, a peaceful, picture-perfect suburban community that promised quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and beautifully maintained lawns. The real estate agent's brochure used all the right buzzwords: secure, serene, exclusive. What she didn't mention was the tyranny of the local homeowners association, the HOA, and, more importantly, its self-proclaimed queen, Karen Winters. I met Karen the very next morning after moving in. She marched up my driveway with the authority of a drill sergeant holding a bright yellow slip of paper. "Your garbage can is visible from the street," she announced, flashing a tight, satisfied smile. "That's a violation of Section 4.3 of the HOA bylaws." I apologized, moved the can, and naively assumed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Within my first week, I was cited for excessive watering of my new lawn, for leaving a work truck in my driveway longer than 6 hours, and my personal favorite, an unapproved doormat color. The mat was beige. Beige. During one of her surprise inspection visits, Karen casually mentioned that her niece was moving to town. "She might need a temporary place to stay while she gets settled," Karen had said, eyeing my 3-bedroom house like she was taking inventory. "You have plenty of extra space since you live alone." I'd smiled politely and changed the subject. There was no way I was letting a total stranger, especially a relative of Karen, stay under my roof. I valued my privacy, and more than that, I valued my sanity. Then, just yesterday, things got truly strange. My Ring doorbell app sent me a motion alert while I was at work. I checked the feed and saw a young woman, mid-20s maybe, pounding on my front door like she was trying to break it down. "Hello, I know you're in there," she yelled, her voice eerily familiar. Later, I'd realize it was the same one from that voicemail. "Aunt Karen said you agreed to let me stay. I just need the door code." When no one answered, she stormed off toward my neighbor Jim's house across the street. The camera caught their exchange perfectly. Jim tried to explain that I wasn't home and wouldn't be back until the evening. "Well, he should have left me the code," she snapped. "Aunt Karen promised I could stay here. This is ridiculous. I'm not sleeping in my car. He can just send me the bill for wherever I end up." Then she stomped back to her car, a shiny BMW with out-of-state plates, and sped out of the neighborhood. I was still trying to wrap my head around the situation when, later that evening, my doorbell rang again. Standing there with a stiff smile was none other than Karen herself, holding what looked like an official document. "Gregory," she began in a tone dripping with fake sweetness, "I have this invoice for Melissa's accommodations. Since you failed to honor our arrangement, the HOA board has determined you're financially responsible for her hotel expenses." She shoved the paper into my hand like it was a court summons. "We expect payment within 48 hours to avoid further penalties." I took the paper but didn't invite her in. My patience had officially run out. "Karen," I said slowly, "there was never any arrangement. I never agreed to host your niece." Her smile vanished in an instant, the fake sweetness melting into raw irritation. "We discussed this already," she snapped. "When I came by about your unapproved landscaping, you said, and I quote, that would be fine. The board has already reviewed this matter." I stared at her, jaw tight. I'm not a hot-headed person by nature, but there was something about Karen's absolute confidence in her lies that made my blood boil. Keeping my tone steady, I said, "Then I'll need to see the minutes from that board meeting." and I'll be contacting the board president directly about this." Karen's face flushed an angry red. "I am the board president," she spat, "and you'll find that the bylaws clearly state that verbal agreements with HOA officials are binding." Then she spun around on her heel and marched back across the cul-de-sac, heels clicking like punctuation marks of arrogance. The moment she disappeared into her house, I pulled out my phone and opened my security app. I started scrolling through the footage from the past few weeks, and my stomach turned. There she was, Melissa, not just once but 3 separate times. Each visit showed her circling my house, peering into windows, and fiddling with the keypad on my garage. On the most recent clip, she'd actually tried to access my key lockbox, punching in random combinations like she was cracking a safe. This wasn't just entitlement anymore. This was criminal. I'd had enough. I called the non-emergency police line and laid out everything. The fake charge on my card, the unwanted visitor, the forged agreement. The dispatcher said an officer would follow up soon. Then I fired off an email to the entire HOA board, all 5 members detailing the situation. I attached screenshots from my security footage and a scanned copy of the bogus invoice Karen had delivered. Within an hour, my inbox blew up. 3 board members replied, each one expressing shock and insisting they'd never heard a word about any arrangement or guest staying at my property. Then my phone rang. It was Thomas Chen, the HOA treasurer. "Greg," he said, sounding genuinely apologetic. "I'm so sorry this is happening. Karen's been overstepping for months, but this is serious. We're calling an emergency board meeting tonight. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you file a police report about the credit card fraud and attempted break-in." The next morning, I was working from home when I noticed flashing lights outside. 2 uniformed police officers were standing at Karen's door. I couldn't hear what was being said, but through her front window, I could see Karen gesturing wildly, her face pale with panic. About 20 minutes later, the same officers came to my house. "Mr. Patterson," the female officer began, "we've spoken with Mrs. Winters and her niece Melissa regarding the incidents you reported. Based on the evidence you've provided and their statements, we're moving forward with charges." I blinked, unsure I'd heard her right. "Charges? What kind?" The officer nodded firmly. "Mrs. Winters claims it was a misunderstanding, but the credit card fraud is clear-cut. We also have security footage showing Melissa attempting to access your home without permission." "What happens now?" I asked. "They've both been taken into custody," the male officer explained. "Karen Winters is being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, impersonating an HOA official for financial gain, and filing false documents. Her niece is facing charges of attempted trespassing, credit card fraud, and filing a false police report." My jaw dropped. "A false police report?" The officer gave a small, incredulous laugh. "Apparently she tried to report you for housing discrimination this morning." I blinked in disbelief. "Housing discrimination? I've never even met her." The officer smirked. "Yeah, that didn't go over well with the sergeant, especially after we showed him the footage of her trying to break into your house." Later that afternoon, the HOA board held an emergency neighborhood meeting. Nearly every homeowner showed up, murmuring anxiously as Thomas Chen stood at the podium with a microphone in hand. "Effective immediately," he announced, "Karen Winters has been removed from the HOA board and is permanently banned from serving in any official capacity. We've uncovered multiple instances where she acted without board approval, issued fake violations, and collected unauthorized fines. All recent citations will be reviewed and likely dismissed." The crowd erupted into shocked whispers and relieved laughter. As for Karen and Melissa, the fallout was swift and brutal. Karen was sentenced to 18 months of probation, ordered to pay a $5,000 fine for fraud, and required to complete 200 hours of community service. The judge, apparently familiar with her antics, noted this wasn't her first abuse of authority. She'd pulled similar stunts in 2 other neighborhoods before moving here. Melissa didn't get off easy either. She received 6 months in county jail for fraud, 3 years of probation, and was ordered to repay every cent of the hotel charges, plus additional damages. When the sentence was read, Melissa broke down in tears, sobbing uncontrollably. Karen, on the other hand, stood there frozen, her once smug expression hollow and pale, as the bailiff led her away. The last thing I heard her mutter was, "This is all a misunderstanding. Don't you know who I—" But her words were cut short as the courtroom doors closed behind her.